Oh, that's not good.
All right, everyone. Hopefully you've gotten your prayers for technical difficulty avoidance out of the way. We certainly have. My name is Charlie Minato.
And I'm Brooks Whittington.
And hopefully you can hear us, and hopefully my computer doesn't decide to crash during this live show. So this is the countdown to PCA 2021 live show number 3. We have one more remaining, and this one's going to be a little bit different than the first two somewhat depressing ones. We're going to talk about some things that we are actually looking forward to seeing, doing at the 2021 PCA Convention Trade Show. I have no idea what you're pointing at. Why would there be an echo?
Thanks, Bo. Is that both of us or just one of us? Whoops.
All right, is the echo gone now? Maybe. All right, we'll see if that gets rid of it. Hopefully, it should. And I guess we'll have to keep talking about it. All right. So, with that said, this is the third show, and like the previous ones that we have done, well, I guess before we get started, we have one more next week. Brooks and I will be back same time and place for the 10 products that we're looking forward to the most. And it seems like there will actually be 10 new items, or a minimum 10 new items at the trade show. So those will be both cigars and accessories. Brooks and I will both make our own list, and we will go through them. We also have a contest. Brooks, do you want to get the prize?
Yes, the prize.
So like we've done for the previous shows, there is a prize. Let's see if I can. Yeah, you got to go way.
Oh, you are tilted all the way.
Okay, so you can kind of see this prize as our award-winning, well, not award-winning photographer tries to get this in frame. So that is a custom-painted Drew Estate Subculture Studios longboard. We are going to give away 3 of them, thanks to Drew Estate. They may not be Herrestli Norteño branded. They could be branded as a different Drew Estate brand, like Acid or Liga Privada. They also could just be a generally Drew Estate branded, or maybe even a Subculture branded one. They do not come with trunks, and they do come with a hanging mount. If you would like to win it, what you need to do is leave a comment, ask a question, either on Facebook or YouTube. Brooks will pick his 3 favorite questions at the end or towards the end of the show, and if your question is read, then you are eligible to win one of these prizes, so long as you meet the various terms and conditions below. So with that out of the way, Brooks.
Yeah. So with that out of the way, Charlie, what cigar are you smoking?
I am lighting up a Mildias. There's no way that's going to focus. Yeah, it's going to be blown out even if it does. Mildias Moraes. It's been sitting on top of one of our humidors for a week now, so we'll see how
I'm sure it'll be awesome. And I am smoking a Padron 4000. Got some age on it, as you can see from the cello.
Yeah, that's really not how that works, but okay.
Don't get Charlie started on whether yellow cello means it's old or not. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's been in there a while. When I opened the humidor, it literally fell out.
So, I mean, that humidor has only been here for 2 years.
It was like somebody was telling me.
I should have asked you how many years you thought it had been in that humidor since.
That's true, because I would have said probably 3.
Mm-hmm.
Personally.
All right. Now that I've got my cigar lit so it can go out immediately. So, like I said, this show is going to be the things that we are looking forward to the most. Like last week's show where Patrick joined me, at least until my computer decided to die. We came up with a list. We each have our 5 things. That's not to say that there wouldn't be crossover, but we tried to come up with 5 unique things for each of us. We also didn't put these in any sort of order, but we felt like it was important to sort of have a less depressing show than what it's been for the last couple weeks. There are certainly a lot of things that have not gone well for the PCA Trade Show in the last 2 years, and I think we would be lying if we said that we thought that this trade show was, at least I think so, is heading in the right direction. I think we all sort of feel like it's probably not heading in the right direction. But it still is important, hence why we're here and why we spend the amount of resources that we do to cover the show both before and after. And there are a lot of things, despite our general, and particularly my criticisms of the trade show and how it's managed, there are a lot of things that we are actually looking forward to. And we would not be investing the amount of resources that we do if we didn't think there were some upsides to the trade show and if, quite frankly, we didn't enjoy some aspects of it. So with that out of the way, Brooks, why don't you get started with your first thing that you are looking forward to regarding PCA 2021?
Right. So look forward to this every year just because it's Vegas. And Vegas to me means quite a bit. It's a very special place to me. I was married in Las Vegas I went to my honeymoon in Las Vegas in 1998.
I was alive.
I
was alive in 1998.
You were alive?
Yeah.
You were like 4?
7 years old.
7.
It's a very sad time in my life when Charles Nagy
blew
1991.
That's when I met my wife in 91.
I'm
I was 15.
Very aware of that.
So
1998 was a great year up until Charles Nagy in the bottom of the 9th inning blowing the Game 7 World Series for the Cleveland Indians against the Florida Marlins.
That was horrible.
I mean, like, if you had to ask me, like, to look back at my life in 1998, yes, I will remember the Cleveland Indians run through the World Series, beating the Yankees, and then Charles Nagy blowing it in the I guess he blew it in extra innings. The closer, which I assume was Jose Mesa, blew it in the bottom of the 9th. But then Nagy came in and gave up the game-winning run.
I mean, who wouldn't remember that?
Well, I mean, 7-year-old memory sticks with me. All right.
So, as I was saying, I was born.
You were born on the 4th of July?
I had my honeymoon in Vegas in 1998 for the first time. It was the first time I went to Vegas. And unbeknownst to me, we would go to Vegas. Lee and I, the wife and I, would go to Vegas about 10 years, 12 years after that, every year for a convention. When my wedding photography business, my documentary wedding photography business, we'd go every year, party, and have fun, unlike what we're doing here. And I've always felt that Vegas is a wonderful place. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. And I've traveled all over the world and lived in various places all over the world. And I've always seen that Vegas is just a unique place that's very alive when you get there. Now, it's different, of course, as you stay there. It takes about 3 days for me to get sick of it. And I think Charlie's the same on that. But when you first show up and when you're just ready to go and all the lights and the the noises and the sound. It's just it's a really invigorating place to go. That is a personal opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. There's nowhere that I've been to that's anywhere sort of close to the uniqueness of Las Vegas, and there's a lot to do, some of which we'll get into later on. But yeah, after like day 3 or 4, I really just want to eat a bowl of pasta and not be bothered and sleep in my own bed and not have to deal with super dry air. But those are the sacrifices that we make for whatever this is.
Indeed. So that was my first thing. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing the team that makes up Halfwheel. And it's been a little while since I've seen a couple of our other members. I see Brooks in our office here every day, but Patrick Legree works out of Phoenix, and that's where he lives. Congrats on his new house.
Congrats.
And I've not seen Patrick since, I believe, TPE of 2020. So January 2020, we were in Las Vegas to cover TPE together. And then obviously the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic sort of hit shortly thereafter. So I've not seen him in a while. We also have another colleague who used to do reviews for us, but still works on a few projects, including our trade show coverage, and that's Brian Burt. Now, Brian was here in our office, if I'm not mistaken, in early 2020. Brooks, you were, for whatever reason, not here when he was here.
Yeah, I didn't. I missed him, unfortunately.
And so I haven't seen either one of them in quite some time. And we also have some other people that we bring in. Well, one of them doesn't actually come to Las Vegas, and that would be Kim. Brooks, you've known Kim for quite a while.
Yes, many, many years, over 20 years now.
And so Kim works to edit our photographs during the trade show, so that way we can have live trade show coverage with edited photographs going up. And that way Brooks doesn't have to be editing photos. He can go and do booth coverage. And then we also bring in an editorial assistant. So for the past couple of years, that's been Heather. But Heather won't be joining us this year. Instead, one of Heather's friends, whose name is Kyle, will be coming to Las Vegas. And I believe that Kyle is actually like a cigar smoker or interested in cigars, which is different than most of our editorial assistants, who I don't think had ever smoked a cigar prior to working for us. And I'm guessing that some of them probably still have not smoked cigars even after working for us.
Indeed.
But it's always nice to see our team. We don't get to do it that often, and particularly to see them for as long as we do in Las Vegas. And, that sort of, there are some, trying times. It's a big adjustment for us, both the workload and also being around each other and having to work as many hours as we do together is a little bit different during the trade shows. That always leads to a little bit of tension. But at the beginning of the show, and certainly at the end of the show, it's always really fun to sort of catch up and reminisce with our team. And all 4 of us have been going to the trade show since at least 2012. And we've been working together, sort of the main ones, as a team since 2013. So certainly a lot of camaraderie covering this unique event.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I've seen everybody, as Charlie said, with COVID and everything. And it's really great to be able to see everybody and catch up. I think that's pretty much what you just said. But regardless of that, I agree.
All right.
So along with that, kind of in the same vein, one of the things that I really look forward to when we get to Vegas is seeing people in the cigar industry and actually talking to people in the cigar industry. And that may seem, kind of obvious, but I'm really more talking about more personal conversations and just having the back and forth with people that I know, that I've known for years now. I don't talk to people in the cigar industry as much as Charlie and Patrick do, but I've got people that I love talking to and talking about their families and discussing things, sitting down over a cigar if we ever have time, which is less than I would like, but it happens, and I'd love to be able to see that. Joe Groh just mentioned he misses the 2 hours we spend together, going around the booth, and I agree. It's a good time. It's work, but it's still good. And thank you. I could have just put that up. But it's one of the things that I really love about the show is that you have all these people that you don't usually see, more than about once or twice a year, and I can sit down and actually have personal conversations with them. Maybe some business in there, but also throw in, stuff about the families and how things are going personally and that kind of thing. Charlie, you do that a lot, or?
No, my trade show experience is a lot different. It's certainly sort of a breadth over depth tends to be how this works. There's so many people there, and
you're a public guy, so
Well, I mean, look, I know a lot of people, and I don't see a lot of them throughout the year. And there's a lot of people who I don't know who recognize me, or I recognize them, and we sort of chat briefly. But yeah, there are some conversations that happen in person, in depth at the show. Although, it's not really during the show. It'll be in Las Vegas, sort of before the show or after the show. I stick around for an extra day, and I'm there many, many days before the show. And so that's time where those conversations maybe can happen, but otherwise it's tough. And I also feel like, on my end, at least, the show encapsulates a lot of the energy that's being spent. And like you mentioned, I talk to these people throughout the year. So some of those conversations happen elsewhere for me.
Yeah. But along with that, you've got something else. What else are you looking for?
Man, these transitions are just fantastic.
They're pro levels for sure.
You and I could perhaps host a daily, like a daily news show.
I worked on it.
Local news. All right. So next up, I know this is a case for a lot of our team, but I've sort of taken an approach that it may not be in our best financial interest to do so, but we ask our team to work very, very hard when they're on the show floor, and quite frankly, some hours off the show floor as well. And as such, you sort of have like not that there isn't a budget for meals, but we do spend a lot of money on meals and go to nice restaurants and try to treat our team, including me, because I enjoy nice meals, to nice dinners in Las Vegas. And there are many, many options. And it's, for a city that is a desert, it is incredible some of the food that you can have in Las Vegas. And so over the years, we've had a lot of memorable meals. I will have some highlights, or throw up some highlights of them. I think this is probably the one for most of our team that really stands out. This was which is a restaurant inside of Haleo at the Cosmopolitan. It's an 8-seat restaurant where everything is either finished or prepared in front of you by a team of, there are actually, I think, 3 people that deal with the food, and then there are 2 servers, but you generally see 2 people. This is in sort of the modern gastronomy aspects. So you see a lot of dishes that are designed to look one way, but are actually not what they look like. So this is designed to look like a very, very tiny pizza with a included pizza box. And I guess in some context it was a pizza, but in reality there was just like massive amounts of truffles dumped on top of that thing. This was a place that we've been to many times. This is Bizarre Meat at the hotel formerly known as the SLS, which is now once again known as the Sahara, another Jose Andres restaurant actually. And there's a server that we have that we've had there. He's actually, I believe, one of the Psalms for Bizarre Meat, but
Psalms.
I forget if he's a Psalm or if he's like a wine director.
Is that an actual thing, a Psalm?
Yeah, sommelier.
No, I know what it means. I just didn't know that's what they called them.
Yeah, well,
sounds like somebody should be in a basement somewhere.
They shorten it. I mean, sommelier is the larger one. Anyway, I would highly recommend the tasting menu at Bizarre Meat. It's a lot of food though, so just be wary about that. Picasso was a restaurant that we went to in 2019. For whatever reason, we had not been able to make reservations there for a really long time. It was good. I don't think it was necessarily... The Michelin Guide came to Las Vegas many years ago. It only was there once. Picasso was awarded 2 stars. I don't know if it necessarily... I'm not a Michelin inspector.
I would have stopped at 1 myself.
But I don't think that it's probably a 2-star restaurant these days. And while I was looking for these pictures, Brooks doesn't know what's about to happen. But I found another great part of our meal tradition, and if Patrick Leary is watching,
it has something to do with seafood.
He will enjoy it, which is that I have a ton of pictures of Brooks next to, generally speaking, large plates of seafood. So I believe this was from 2018, and then we got this one from 2019.
I haven't aged a bit, apparently.
We've got that thing, which is not seafood. Got this one, which is from many years ago. That was when I was drawing trade show maps on the table.
Yes,
with the assistant of Patrick.
The reason that he has these photographs, he finds it very amusing that I don't eat seafood.
It's more like your reactions to them are just
for the most part. And I really never have eaten seafood other than that once that you made me
totally
eat a taco
not true.
or something of that nature. Regardless of that.
No, I mean, this is the running joke. Is Brooks tells people that he's allergic to fish, and then I correct him.
So I don't have to eat them.
Because he doesn't actually know if he's allergic to fish, and the evidence actually suggests that he probably isn't.
Probably not.
And then he has knowingly and unknowingly had seafood multiple times in Las Vegas. Knowingly, you did it with the Zycar team or the QI
I
team.
did, yeah.
Over at Lotus of Siam, but you like unknowingly had it at Bizarre Meat.
You they literally killed me. You know that.
Well, no, they told you. They made you a separate dish, and then you proceeded to eat the dish that they made for the rest of the table that eats seafood. So,
look, typically, if it doesn't moo, cluck, or oink, I don't eat it. So,
yeah, except for those other times. And on that note,
yes, traditions. The photograph apparently a tradition. But one of the things that I really look forward to, one of the other things I look forward to, is the traditions that we have as a team. Traditions that when we go to Vegas, what we do as a team, typically. And so one of the big things is Casa Fuente. We try to make time to go to Casa Fuente and enjoy a cigar. If you don't know, it's a cigar store and bar inside of the Forum Shops in Caesar's Palace. And it has its own specific blend, a very exclusive blend called Casa Fuente, ironically enough. And it's a very good cigar, typically, although I prefer the Lancero when I can get them. They're usually not available, or at least not to me. The mojitos are well known. I enjoy the pomegranate mojito. Are you a big fan? Are you?
I mean, there was a time in which I was making thousands of mojitos a year.
Indeed.
But I don't think they're they're good. I don't think that they're excellent.
All right.
I find them to be a bit too sweet. But
that's probably why I like them. Sweet tooth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting less and less into the sweetness, but I mean, look, it's Las Vegas, so and it's super dry and hot in July, and so a cold alcoholic beverage is usually. I mean, I'm not going to say no to a Casa Fuente mojito at any point during our trip in Las Vegas.
Noted. So Casa Fuente,
unless it's like 4 days old.
A big one that we try to go to every year, and we have, as far as I know, every year that I remember anyway, which is probably not many. The night before the show starts, we typically go to Momofuku. Fuku. Sorry, Fuku. Very, very nice place that I love, and that's Charlie.
Super quiet.
Introduced me to. He's more the food guy, and so for me, I just kind of follow him around. I didn't even know anything about what's the place right next to Momofuku, the
Milk Bar.
Milk Bar. I had no idea.
Or Egg Slut.
What?
Egg Slut.
I was talking about Milk Bar, but Egg Slut I've heard is...
Egg Slut's very good, but I'm not usually awake for breakfast. There's actually, I don't know if you know this, there's a...
I don't, probably.
I forget if he's opened up the second one, but there's a Momofuku now. There's one already open. Well, it's not Momofuku, but one of their restaurants within that group is open in the Venetian Palazzo. And he's opening up a second one as well. And I forget if he announced plans for a third pre-pandemic.
Like the branded one, Momofuku, or something else?
Well, so they're all different. This one is not the same cuisine, the same food dishes that you get at the one at the Cosmo. And then he's planning on opening up one that's more like of a grill concept as well at the Venetian.
Well, I still remember the meal we had, and I don't remember when it was, but I remember the meal specifically. We went up there. I went up there a day early to help set up, and we had a nice little meal at the bar, and it was a nice little meal.
I think that was this one where the shoe ended up on the bar.
Yes, the shoe, not my shoe. But traditions are a big part of what we do, and we really, as you mentioned before, really try to relax when we can. It's not very often, but we certainly try to. All the team like each other, and all the team, work well together for the most part. There are times when things get a little testy, but for the most part, we've been together a long, long time. And so it's easy for us to get back into that mode of hey, let's go have some fun. Let's talk about some stuff that isn't necessarily cigars. And it's really one of the things that I really, really, really enjoy and really look forward to every year.
Yeah, and on that note, one of the traditions that we used to have that we no longer have is there used to be a restaurant in the Sands Venetian Palazzo complex called I Heart Burgers, which we used to go to at the end of the show every year because it was quick and easy, and that led to this infamous picture where Brooks had knocked over his soda and it had spilled all over a whole bunch of cigars, and I asked the server to get him a sippy cup, and the server thought we were joking, and I was somewhat joking, but then I realized that they actually probably had sippy cups, so he ended up with that, and then Patrick took this glorious picture. How was the burger?
I looked depressed.
How was the burger?
Pretty decent.
Okay. All right. So I also look forward to the work and not just doing it. That's not exactly the most fun. But I always have looked at this as our Super Bowl. It is certainly the thing that we spend the most amount of time collectively working towards. And it's a lot of different work than what we do. We normally obviously don't do these live shows, as evidenced by our audience. I appreciate all 7 of you that are watching. We spend a lot of time, it might as well be 7. We spend a lot of time working, on this stuff. And I also think that, we're able to do things at this show that, quite frankly, our contemporaries don't do. And it's a lot of different work. You can see this is a video that Heather took from the 19 show. There's a lot that goes into producing our content, and you can see it just makes us super happy. Well, it made Heather happy. At the end of the show, it's always sort of a nice moment where I look back and I see just how many booths we went to, how many posts went up during the show, and all of the other things that are involved with our show coverage. And I really think that, we've worked really hard to develop a formula that works. There's a lot of planning and prep that goes into it. But I think it pays off, and hopefully, at least some of you guys are here for things other than a Davidoff contest, particularly because this year there won't be a Davidoff contest. It will be a different brands contest.
Right. It's always being able to know that we're doing good work and having that high of being saying, listen, we're getting this stuff out, day after day after day live. It's really invigorating to be able to go in there and say that this is something that we can do. And looking back on it, as you mentioned, looking back on it and saying, this is something that we did. It's over now, and we can move on. But it was something that we put everything that we had into, for the most part. And I mean, that's something that I can enjoy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I'm very skeptical about the future of this trade show, particularly in its current form. But it will be sad, I think, for us if it goes away. We, quite frankly, don't make very much money covering the trade show. It didn't really matter much last year that the trade show didn't happen from a financial perspective on our end. But it is something that I'm extremely proud of the work that we do, and I will miss it. I imagine a lot more than I sort of think about now if it goes away, because we spent a lot of time developing this formula, and I think we do a good job, and I think it's important. There are a lot of companies that we cover at the trade show that more or less don't get written about, except by us, and there's a lot of products that we cover from big companies that wouldn't get covered for one reason or another. There have been a lot of moments over the years where, you remember way back when, this is pre-halfwheel, when we were talking with some folks at Fuente about Casa Cubo, like a year before they had wanted to announce that project. And those are things that, are distinct. I guess we could have flown to Tampa and asked them about Casa Cuba, but those are distinct. Maybe. Those are distinct moments that sort of happen at the trade show, and it'll be sad if it ultimately comes to an end.
Yes, I would definitely be sad. It's a lot of work for everybody, mostly Charlie. But
no, it's a lot of work for everyone.
But it's definitely something that I look forward to regardless. And so, as we mentioned in this specific thing.
Yeah. Surprise!
So another thing, hey. So another thing that I really look forward to every year, because it seems to happen every year. Somebody always seems to come into the show, the booth, usually in the first day, maybe the second day, and say something like, "Hey, have you seen whatever at whoever's booth?" And we'd say, "No, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, because I've only been on this side of the friggin' place." And they say, "Well, you got to go see it because it's awesome." And we'll go see it, and it typically is awesome. But usually it's something unusual. Usually it's something that somebody's put some major effort into. But it seems to happen every year that there's something like that. One year was the water lighter from SU DuPont, and which
unfortunately wasn't working for most of the show.
Yeah, it didn't work when I saw it, but it looked pretty cool. And I heard it worked for a little while, and that it worked pretty well, and then it stopped. And but basically, it's a lighter that it takes water to to actually work.
Do you want to explain the?
I do. If you have the internal specs, I can actually break it down for you.
From the French Nuclear Agency.
Sure. Yeah. You got that? Okay. No. All right. Well, I was gonna. All right. Well, another year was the fire simulated fire from Placencia.
And there was the 1 year where there was fire in the AJ booth.
That's a whole nother issue.
Surprise.
But the simulated fire from Placencia, their little thing there looked just like fire in photographs and really in person if you don't go up and look at it right, really, really close. In fact, the fire marshals were called in to make sure that was not actually real fire, is what they told me at the time. So something cool, something different. We also had the, let me see, look at my...
well,
my
Patrick mentioned, we don't have a picture of it, but Placencia had a golf simulator, which...
that was TPE, though. They may have had it, but TPE.
He mentioned it, but Placencia's, yeah. But I know Altada's had one at TPE.
He was talking about the beef jerky. So
we didn't. I don't think I threw a picture of that up. But yeah, Island Jim's beef jerky.
Right. So what is it? 3 years ago, maybe? And somebody came over. It was Patrick. He said, "Hey, have you tried the beef jerky at Island Jim's?" And I'm like, "No, I love beef jerky. It's not made of seafood."
We had so many samples of that stuff.
So I went to Island Jim and I said, "Hey, I already got beef jerky. Good. Here's the beef jerky." And I'm like, "Hey, great, cool." And I tried one. Holy crap, this is really good.
It was like pineapple Slim Jim, essentially, is what it was.
Pineapple teriyaki, I believe, is what it was.
But like in Slim Jim form, not really.
It was like really long. It was really long. And I was like, "Holy crap, give me some more of those." And so we got a few of them, and
we got way more than a few of them.
We ate them all the whole time.
We did not eat all of them because we had to throw them out.
Eat the whole time, I said.
Yeah.
So it was great, and it was great to be able to see things like this happening. Another thing, thank you, Charlie, is Amazon Basin. I covered the booth that year, and I went back to the booth, I believe, although I don't remember this specifically. I'm sure I did, and went, "Hey, listen, this Amazon Basin thing is actually pretty cool." They did a nice little thing with the whole booth, and so and it worked out. The Amazon, I had no idea that would turn out to be the popular release that it has become. But they did a good job, and it was something that I was able to go to and say, "Hey, this is something cool." So every year it seems like there's something like that, and so I always wonder what it's going to be every year.
Yeah, Amazon Basin really sticks out to me because I remember we were in I Heart Burgers, and you were like, "The story behind this is crazy. They're in the Amazon rainforest, and there's boats, and it's only available a couple times per decade." And I don't know how much of that's necessarily true. It sounds like some of it may be true, and some of it may be a little bit not true. But what was crazy is then we smoked the cigars, and they were very good. But that's not always indicative of how the cigar is going to do in the market. And obviously, it did quite well. And I think it, I would have to imagine it far exceeded General's expectations, even on sort of the high end of what that cigar could do. And obviously, went on to be many more cigars in that series later. And so, yeah, the surprises are always interesting. It's always, you never know which booth's going to produce sort of the most memorable one of the bunch.
Yes, indeed. But along with that, you have something else. What else?
Yeah, I mean, this is not really as much of a surprise. So people always ask, like, "Oh, how many cigars do you smoke during the trade show?" And the answer is almost no cigars during the trade show. The reason is that we walk around with a camera and a tripod or a monopod, and I've got a notebook to write down information, and we're constantly taking pictures, and there's microphones, and so there just isn't really enough room in my hands to be walking around with a cigar. And if I was, it will continually go out and will ash all over people's booths and my clothes and whatnot. So it's just easier to not smoke a cigar when I'm in booths. And as such, I don't really smoke that many cigars during the show. But and even if I do, it's never a good time to really be like, "Okay, this is a good cigar, this is a bad cigar," because it's dry. The who knows what condition the cigars were stored in. It's super smoky. My palate's usually shot. My brain is completely fried. However, the trade show is a place where you can see some pretty cool accessories. So obviously, the water lighter was kind of an absurd one, but there is a whole mess of absurd stuff that comes into the SC2 booth every year. And a lot of this stuff are things that, while I go to shops and I go to other shows, these are items that I don't really see other than at the trade show. And a lot of them I only see once. And so, you can see these two items up here, I'm guessing are both $10,000, if not $20,000 a piece for these lighters. The top of the frog head, it's cut off there is a lighter, and then the top of the lighthouse there is also a lighter. And to see the craftsmanship that goes into the SCU Haunt booth with the hand accessories is crazy. And then the other booth that also is a similar story is Ellie Blue's booth, which has just got an insane amount. I guess the number of humidors is probably, they probably have more humidors in their booth than anyone else does. Maybe QI or Prestige, come close to it, but certainly from a price perspective, it's just on a completely different planet. And the craftsmanship there is crazy. This blue humidor, which is not, Ellie Blue will have humidors in their booth that are, north of $40,000-$50,000. This one was not that. It was, I think, around $10,000. But it just, that one stuck out to me as like, oh wow, that's like a, if I could justify spending $10,000 on a humidor of that size, that's the one you would do. And Davidoff certainly brings some interesting humidors, and there are a handful of other people, but it's always nice to be able to see the accessories, because unlike with the cigars, you can kind of play around with them. And for a lot of people, this will be the only time where you could open up the door of that Ellie Blue humidor and see what it looks like. You should probably ask for permission first. But yeah, so Bricks, you cover one accessory company that's got some, I would say pretty high-end items that we don't see if you walk into a normal store.
Prometheus, yeah. Great people and, really nice looking stuff. And I look forward to it all the time. It's a lot of, a whole bunch of time spent in that booth, but any of those accessory companies, you're going to spend a lot of time covering a lot of the stuff that they have. But I look forward to it because it's always good stuff, as you said. But there may not be as many this year, obviously. So, I wonder if they're going to come out with something really big to make up for it, or if they're just going to let it slide.
Yeah, sorry,
that's a good question.
Zoned out.
Hey, speaking of questions.
Yeah, that's what I was about to get to.
Zoned out, yeah. Okay.
No, as Brooks was about to say, speaking of questions, if you'd like to win one of those skateboards, because there are like 2.5 people watching this, I would recommend asking a question. You have decent odds.
At this point, any question, really.
Of winning a Drew Estate longboard. Just ask a question and perhaps we'll answer it. And we really need to rethink the promotion strategy for these live shows. If the live show viewership is a decline is any indication of this trade show, we are in for some fun times.
I'm having fun.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Brooks?
Yes. So, final thing that I'm looking forward to, and at least on this list, that I can say out loud, is the wondering exactly how bad this is going to be. Look, the PCA, IPCPR, PCA, they've had some problems, as we've detailed, and as Charlie has mentioned numerous times. From CigarCon debacle to the companies pulling out to lots of things going on, and it just seems like that there's always just this cloud of gloom that is that's just sitting over the show in terms of is it going to be this horrible, thing that's happening? Is it going to be, half as many people there or whatever it is? And I'm really looking forward to seeing, if it's as bad as we are.
Our live show viewership?
Wondering it is going to be. I'm actually having fun, so I think it's doing great. Charlie, don't be so negative. I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how it shapes up. And I think it's an important thing, as Charlie mentioned. I think it's an important thing that the PCA stick around in some form or fashion. I'm sure that things could be done better, but it's really, it's great for the industry, I think, and I think that it's something that really should be around. But what I think should be around usually isn't. Otherwise, pet rocks would still be a thing. I had a lot of those when I was young. But be that as it may, Charlie, what do you think?
I think you should have practiced that a bit more.
I did practice it in the mirror.
Yeah, maybe a different mirror. Awesome. Look, this question got brought up because we have been at Halfwheel quite public with our thoughts about some of the missteps that we think are going on regarding the leadership and the decision making of this trade show, and I certainly think that we're not alone in those thoughts. And we haven't had a trade show in 2 years. A lot has not gone well since then. There have been a lot of look, every year that I've been going to the trade show, I've always heard people complaining about declining attendance and whatnot and all sorts of things. Some of that's true. Some of that was misguided for a certain period of time. And some of that was just like people, I think, had this idea that the trade show was just going to be, some sort of, just absolute bananas event where there were just hundreds of retailers that you'd never heard of before showing up to the trade show and placing orders. That certainly was not going to be the case as the trade show matured. But what's different between those first sort of 10 years of me covering the trade show and the last 2 years has been that there's just been a lot of much larger public missteps. Brooks mentioned CigarCon. He also mentioned the Altadis Davidoff Drew Estate General Cigar Company announcing they weren't going to attend the 2020 trade show. There also wasn't a trade show in 2020, which was not something that the PCA really had any direct say over. And yeah, like any one of those things would be like could you imagine, Brooks, if like given all the shit that took place in 2019, if the trade show in 2020 had happened, like, which pretend COVID just doesn't happen. So basically I'm going to live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And so like imagine like,
it's funny because it's true.
It was very true. Just no COVID. Like imagine if the 2019 show happens, CigarCon, the debacle happens, and then we're just going into the 2020 show, forget the Altadis Davidoff Drew Estate General thing. Like that alone would be a big enough, like, oh, like you guys got to recover from that.
Certainly.
Then you throw on forget CigarCon ever was an idea that got publicly proposed or publicly rolled out.
I'm supposed to be forgetting.
And then you take a scenario like a different world where the only thing that happens is Altadis Davidoff Drew Estate General and whoever else say they're not going to attend the trade show. That would be a big enough, like, oh shit, 4 out of your 5 largest clients said we no longer think that this is a good product, and we have questions about the management of the trade show or the organization as a whole. That would be a big enough issue. Or if the 2020 show doesn't happen, just in an isolated incident, and then you got to restart the show for 2021, that itself would be a big enough hurdle to clear. We are dealing with a scenario where all 3 of those, along with some other sort of minor things, are also concerns for the show. And the question here was, is all of this negative things that we think are going to lead to problems, like, are they going to materialize, or is it going to be a little less bad than we thought? And
right, and I think that one of the things that I found, I covered TPE for the first time earlier this year, last month, I guess. And I was really impressed with the show and really impressed with how it was run. It's a smaller show, but it really, solidified my thinking in terms of, listen, there are other alternatives perhaps that people are looking at now. It used to be that wasn't necessarily the case, at least not in any major way. But I think that it's possible that the PCA has, I think that it's possible that there's room out there for other shows to take some of the luster away from what the PCA has been doing. And if that's the case, then that's just another problem that the PCA is going to have. I'm interested to see whether that's the case, regardless, and that's why the slide is up there.
Yeah, and I think you could,
and why I practiced it last night.
You could alternatively frame this question as, is there enough support for the trade show as a sort of FOMO event? Can that overcome the structural issues that exist with buying trade shows in general? Because these are problems that exist in plenty of other industries. But we sort of promised a lot less doom and gloom. So with that all out of the way, although viewership has gone up, we're now at 8 people. The last thing on our list. So Brooks, I need you to pull some questions. I have no idea how this is going to go, other than it appears that there's like a 2/3 chance that
can John Huber win?
I mean, his question was, am I eligible for the skateboard? I mean, he has a cigar. Like, couldn't they just make him? They make cigars for him. Like,
it's true.
They probably could make him a skateboard. It's true. Huber might actually ride it though, so there's that. Anyway, so the last thing I'll say is that the trade show is the place that I always look to whenever somebody's like, oh, what was happening in 2016? I think back to the trade show. That's how the first point that I always look at when you're trying to evaluate the progression of the industry and quite frankly, the progression of halfwheel. The trade show is usually the starting point because that's where a lot of business happens, not just the selling of cigars, but also You know, I don't know if it necessarily marks the beginning of a year or the end of a year for the cigar industry. It's oddly placed right in the middle of the year, so it sort of serves as a midpoint on a Gregorian calendar basis. But it's the point that I sort of, you know, think about whenever I'm trying to trace back. And you know, I am always curious to know what are going to be the defining themes that come out of the show that didn't exist prior to the show. And so, you know, I always tell people the first show that we covered as Halfwheel was in 2012 in Orlando. And Brooks, do you remember, beyond us eating at McDonald's like way too much because we were out of time and there just happened to be McDonald's everywhere, do you remember anything else beyond like, do you remember what was happening on the show floor in Orlando that was kind of the big theme?
I remember the humidity.
Yeah, that wasn't fun.
No, I do not, is the answer to your question.
So what's interesting about that is if you only went to the 2012 trade show and that was your only experience,
I was in the 2012 trade show?
You were, but if you had only gone there and you had no other knowledge of the cigar industry, but you just spent 4 days at the 2012 trade show, you would think that Sindicato was the most important thing that happened like in the cigar industry, because at the 2012 trade show, it was inescapable. You would go into booths that, quite frankly, of massive companies, and I'm not talking about just General and Altadas. I'm talking about companies that have, you know, are brands that a lot of you like to smoke. A lot of you that work in the cigar industry that have your own cigars like to smoke these brands. And these very respected, highly regarded, been around for a very long time companies would be like, what are your thoughts on Sindicato? And you're like, I cannot believe I'm having a conversation about Sindicato with these people, but that's how big of a deal Sindicato was. Now, as it turned out, that thing basically completely fizzled once the cigars started ending up on shelves. It didn't completely fizzle. Sindicato's still around, but it had an unbelievably outsized importance at the 2012 trade show that just never materialized after that. And so things like that always happen. We talked about some things in the test run, but I was thinking back in 2015. So the trade show before the FDA regulations were finalized. For whatever reason, I think Patrick and I decided we were going to go to an FDA seminar that was being hosted the day before the show opened. And I think you and Brian came in because you were trying to get things from us or whatever. And I remember we were all there and there was maybe 30 people in the room. And amongst the 30 people, that meant that like 6 of them were on stage as part of the moderators and guests for this panel. There was like another probably 8 people that were working for the stands and the other companies that were running the actual seminar. So the guy that had the video camera and the audio guy and the people that were coming around to refill waters. And then there was like maybe a dozen people, including the 4 of us in this room. And I remember looking around and telling Patrick, like, we are so fucked as an industry because the FDA regulations are definitely, you know, we can't have our videos monetized, so we can say whatever we want.
Yeah.
But, you know, the FDA regulations were definitely coming around, and we weren't sure if they were going to come in 16 or maybe they come in 15, but we certainly knew they were on the horizon. And we didn't know what they were exactly going to be. And there was certainly a chance that the cigar industry maybe wasn't going to have the same set of regulations or be regulated at all. But just the complete, like, okay, basically no one's here. And amongst the people that were here, like, knowledge was pretty high. Like, in front of us was Craig Williamson and some of the other people from CAA. Like, those people didn't really learn anything at that seminar. They were just there to support their colleague who was on the panel. And then you compare that to 2016, once the regulations take effect. And that was the seminars where they had a manufacturer seminar and they had a retail seminar, and there wasn't enough space. I don't know if you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just packed, and people were asking questions, some of which weren't great questions. And, you know, so you get to see that evolution. The 15 seminar of the FDA was basically no one gave a shit. And then in 16, it was like, holy fuck, panic, because the regulations are starting in August. And so I always look at the trade show as a place to see the evolution. It's always curious to see what we sort of think is the defining narratives heading into the show about the industry as a whole, and you know, what they leave. And, you know, like we mentioned yesterday, Brooks, in our sort of practice run, it's also a place where, you know, you can look back to our progression of covering this industry around the trade show. What we do now is very different than those years where we would sit in the sort of coffee shop outside the trade show floor and try to work, or, you know, use people's cell phones to try to upload things to the internet not so successfully.
Those were the days. Also, those were the days when we walked around, just you and me, and back before Halfwheel existed, right? We just walked around.
It was only a few days. It was just 2011.
And we would just just hanging out a long time ago.
Yeah, we much different trade show experience. That was when you got to selectively choose what you wanted to write about, which was not much.
Yeah, well, my blog back then was really more of a passion of love than a business.
All right, Brooks. Looks like we got some questions, so let's try to.
All right, so let's look at the questions. What are we thinking here? Wow, 13. I like it. Let's do that. It's not letting me do it. Hold on.
You can just read it.
Now that we are seeing how trade shows are coming back to the U.S., but Intertobac seems to not be happening for the second year in a row, what's the future like for shows in Europe? Charlie, I know nothing about this, so Charlie's the man.
Yeah, I believe that there will be a vape show, it sounds like, later in the year at the Westfalenhallen in Dortmund, which is where the Intertobac Trade Fair is technically how they like to describe it in Europe, takes place. And I don't know if that's also owned by the very lengthy German name that I cannot remember nor pronounce. Because the convention center owns Intertobac, which is different than the PCA show. I don't know if they also own this vape show that I got a press release about. We obviously don't cover vapes, so it wasn't of interest there. But yeah, I think Dortmund will be back. I suspect that it will be back in a big way. I think the real question with Dortmund is what does, for those of you that don't know, Dortmund is very similar to TPE in the sense that cigars are a meaningful part of the show, but they are not the majority of the show floor. And Dortmund includes a lot more than what TPE does. There's a large vape presence, certainly. There's also, the cigarette companies. So you see the big cigarette companies, like British American Tobacco and Philip Morris, and those people tend to have booths at that show. The European market is also just different because it's a lot more fragmented, but it also is a different mix of products. So machine-made cigars are a much bigger deal in Europe than they are here in the U.S. And certainly at the trade show, you see a lot of that diversity come out. Dortmund obviously has a focus on the entirety of the international markets, so the Asian markets are also of increasing importance, as well as to some degree the Middle East. And so there are a lot of different factors, but certainly, the people that own the Dortmund trade show are as financially motivated as you could be because they own the actual building that it's hosted in. And so I suspect that we will be back in Dortmund in 2022. I was a bit surprised that they announced the cancellation as early as they did, because I don't know how the logistics of that show have to be at just a completely different level than I have any understanding of. But obviously, as of right now, you probably could have a pretty healthy version of the Dortmund show. I don't think you could have what it was in 19 with the travel restrictions that exist for all these different countries. But certainly, the rules about going over to the EU right now for the Americans are, as long as you're vaccinated, I think you're good to go. And that would mean that a lot of those companies would come over. So I suspect we'll be back in Dortmund, and I certainly look forward to going and hopefully getting to see a football match, or a soccer game, as we would call it here in America.
Yeah, I know you love those soccer games.
I do.
So I can't stand soccer.
Okay.
Boring sport.
Next
question.
Are we taking John Huber's food order, or are we doing
no. Let's do that one right there.
So why don't they move the show out of Vegas and change the time of year? Seems like that would be helpful. So these are things that are not new considerations. So I will try to run through this as best I can. So in 2008, was that in Houston? I forget now. Let's start with the years that I definitely know. So 2010 and 2011 were in New Orleans. 2012 was in Orlando. 13, 14 were back in Vegas, and then either 15 or 16 was in New Orleans, and then we've been in Vegas ever since. The reason as to why it's in Vegas is because every time that you poll people, the retailers seemingly are more likely to go to Las Vegas. Obviously, it depends on there's a bit of a regional shift. So if it's in Florida, you get a lot more East Coast people and a lot less West Coast people. If it's in Vegas, you get more West Coast people, less East Coast people. I don't know if there's a great scenario there, but the other thing about Vegas that's very helpful that we ran into in New Orleans, for example, is that in Vegas, at least pre-COVID, and I think for the most part post-COVID, you can smoke in the casinos, and there's just a lot more smoking venues to be had. In New Orleans, we had our trade show in 2015 or 16, and it was right after the smoking ban for bars in New Orleans went into effect, which meant that you could not smoke in bars, which meant that if you wanted to smoke, you either had to rent out a private facility or you had to be outside in New Orleans in the summer.
And that was miserable.
Yeah. And the other problem, which we saw in Orlando, is that the other beauty of Vegas is that everyone kind of generally stays in the same area. And so it makes having dinners and things like that a lot easier because people are generally at the same couple hotels, and you can find places to eat in those hotels. As for the time of the year, this is something that I've been pretty consistent that I think this is probably the best time of the year. You got to look at the map of or the calendar of the year. So TP is already in January, February. TAA, which is a smaller show that's only exclusive to about 80 retailers, is in March, typically late March, early April. And so I don't think you would want to have a show in either January or March or April because it would just be too much for everyone involved. And so then that means, okay, well, when are you going to do it? The summer is not great for a lot of reasons. It's hot as fuck in Las Vegas. But there are some strategic benefits. One of them is that retailers have had enough time throughout the year to sort of build up their cash reserves to place big orders. You're still getting the retailers placing orders at a decent time of year where they have time to sell through the product that they purchase. If the trade show is being hosted, say, in mid-October, some of these retailers would have the holiday season where they do well. But if you're in the Northeast, for example, it's an okay-ish time, but you also are, you have less sales than you do over the summer. And that's certainly an issue. I think that it would be a lot more challenging just from a scheduling perspective to try to do it in the fall and in the winter. There's just a lot more going on. And so I think that the summer is, for better and worse, sort of probably the best option. The other thing that doesn't really get talked about much is that I have a feeling it costs a lot less money to be doing this trade show in the middle of July than it does to be doing it in sort of a premier time in Las Vegas for a trade show. So my guess is that if you want to do this show in, say, February, it would be a lot more expensive to host than it does in July when Las Vegas just doesn't have as many trade shows going on.
So there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Last question.
One last thing on that. I do think that one thing the PCA in the IPSPR, the organization changed names, they have asked at times about like when they would like the trade show to happen or where to happen. Oftentimes those surveys have not been designed in the best manner, but I do think that it's something that should be being asked every year, if not multiple times per year, amongst both the retailers and the manufacturers to get that data. I don't know how consistently that's being asked.
Good point. All right. Third question. My submission. Why did LFD and JDN bail on the show? And more importantly, the question was, why did the Consumer Day get nixed?
Well, Brooks, you could probably explain why Hoya is not going to be there.
I can. It's because they are distributed by Drew Estate. Drew Estate is not at the show.
Yeah. And so, I think that
I did good.
Well, you did well. I think that Hoya de Nicaragua probably could be at the show. They would be there basically just to say hi to people. I think it would be really tough for them without having the Drew Estate infrastructure there to write orders, and so that might challenge things a little bit. It wouldn't have surprised me, to be quite honest, if Hoya showed up just to say hi because they can see a whole bunch of retailers all at once, and obviously the sort of Hoya team. They have a presence in the U.S. They have a full-time employee who sort of works as a brand ambassador here. But a lot of the people like Juan and Dr. Cuenca and Mario and those people, they aren't necessarily in the U.S. That much. They're certainly not here, 52 weeks a year. As far as LFDs going, I haven't asked them specifically, but we sort of hit on this last week when we talked about LFD not being at the show. If there is a company that I think of when I think of back orders, it's La Flor Dominicana. I suspect that, for a number of different reasons, but one of them being that, they have a back order issue that seemingly is, is not going away. And if you don't have product to ship, then I don't know why you need to spend all this money to sell even more product that you may or may not have inventory for. So that seems like an explanation for LFD, but once again, I did not talk to them, so I don't know specifically. Consumer Day.
Consumer Day.
Yeah, Bruce, you probably can handle this too.
Thanks. No, not coming back.
No, they asked why.
Oh,
why did it get nixed?
They asked why. Why did it get nixed? Because I'm going to go with most manufacturers didn't like the idea.
Well, we don't know if most manufacturers did because we didn't survey all of them. But yeah, there were not great reactions. I would say that retailers, if anything, were more upset than the manufacturers were.
As we mentioned before, if you want to get into the show, you can. You just have to do it under a retailer badge somehow. So it's not like there's consumers every year that go to the show that have nothing to do with the retailers.
Okay.
So
the reasons why CigarCon isn't happening, there are many of them. One of them is that I don't think the PCA ever really got to a point where they really could have, where they should have been publicly talking about the idea as much as they were. They never really made it clear that they had done the math to figure out how profitable this thing could be. One of the most concerning moments related to CigarCon was there was a press conference, and I asked Scott Pierce, the executive director of the PCA, because he had said that they didn't think that CigarCon would be profitable. There was a chance, or a good chance, I don't know exact phrasing here, that for 3 years it potentially may not be profitable. And it created a scenario where he had said that they thought that they were going to sell out within 3 years, but still not be profitable, which was a very concerning reality because that meant that they had apparently run the numbers about doing this event and realized that even if they sold all of the tickets, it still wouldn't have been profitable. Now, I don't know if that was the exact conclusion. That certainly was how it was presented in the press conference answers, was that scenario existed. But they also just never turned over data where they said, okay, we think we can generate $1.5 million in revenue, and we think we can net $500,000 off of that. And here's sort of the break-even point about the number of tickets. They never announced the price of the tickets or anything along those lines. And yet they were talking about this idea as if it was happening. And that was problematic. I think they also just did not do enough work, particularly with the retailers, of getting their inputs and asking them and making adjustments. They certainly did that with a variety of manufacturers where they let them know what the PCA was planning on announcing. But that was problematic. And then obviously I think you combine that with some of these other issues that took place where at the time that they announced the cancellation of CigarCon, Altadas, Davidoff, Drew Estate in general had not yet announced that they were not attending the show, but they had told the PCA that there were issues that if they weren't resolved, they would not be attending the show. And that obviously changed the dynamic a bit. But ultimately, I think that they read the room, and the room was overwhelmingly against this idea, at least as it was being presented.
Yeah. There were a lot of questions they didn't answer when they announced it. So, all right. So that's that. Oh, wait. Shout out to John Huber. Joe, if you're still watching, you should send John Huber one of his boards. I want to see a TikTok of him writing that.
All right. So if we read your question, then please send an email to contest@halfwheel.com. You have until tomorrow at noon Central Time to get your emails in. I will add you to our list. And sometime in July, Joe Grow and the team at Drew Estate will ship out the prizes to you, hopefully. They're not being sent by us. They're being sent by Drew Estate. So they have a custom-made cardboard box for these things. That's quite impressive. We will be back one more time next week. Hopefully there'll be more than 7 of you joining us, but for the 7 of you that were here today, we really appreciate it. And we will be talking about the 10 products that we are looking forward to the most. So you can have some questions about things regarding those products, I suppose. It's one last opportunity to win skateboards, and there will be way more prizes coming from Drew Estate regarding our PCA coverage. But until next week, I guess we'll still be here. I need to play an ad. I don't.